Yeah, yeah, yeah. Beelzemon's in this, and I don't really fully understand why. Well, I do, but it's kind of shallow. Before we start talking about his history and his character, I would just like to say that Beelzemon is probably my favorite Digimon of this season, at least on the hero side. But he's still subject to many of the same problems and mishandlings that several other characters have had, such as Dark Knightmon and Darulamon. So although I like him the most, he's still going to get a healthy dose of criticism. Alright, now that that's out of the way, it should probably be mentioned that Beelzemon didn't actually start out in the story as Beelzemon. Rather, originally he was a Digimon named Balmon. Balmon works for the Bagger Army, but not as a general or commanding officer, but rather as an assassin. Balmon is rather mysterious. In fact, we don't know anything about him other than Blastmon hates him. In fact, all the high-ranking Bagger Army officers just seem to have a general distrust of Balmon. And for the most part, he doesn't really do much. I mean, we see him hang out in the command center with all the other generals. We see him give some ominous warnings to Tactimon about friends and betrayal, which may be foreshadowing or just could be some vague, generic threat that he's saying to try to be more mysterious. I think the next time we see him doing something is when he's at the lake zone and he reveals that he's in love with Lilithmon. What? Wait, no, he was lying so we can get closer to her to see her powers of illusion. False alarm, false alarm. In the lake zone, he also meets our heroes for the first time and fights them. And by fights them, I mean he shoots at an unarmed 10-year-old, misses every shot, and then runs away like a sissy as soon as Kiria shows up. Okay? Not the way I would have chosen to introduce a merciless assassin, but to each his own. Then he appears in the next episode at the Sand Zone. And boy, has his aim gotten better. Last time we saw him, he couldn't shoot 10 feet in front of him. Now he can shoot the X-Loader out of Taiki's hand, no problem. Very minor nitpick, but that thing has always kind of bothered me where characters have selective good accuracy. Only because if the character had at least decent accuracy in parts of the story, the main character would have been dead by now. Oh yeah, they're fighting. So yeah, Balmon shoots Taiki's X-Loader out of his hand just so he can give it back to him. Oh, because of the statue. Huh, that's interesting. And then they fight, and it is actually, I think, a pretty good fight. It's very fast-paced, and I wish they had a fight like this to introduce Balmon to the heroes instead of the one that they had at the Lake Zone. I don't know, that intro just seemed kind of lackluster. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, while Taiki is fighting Balmon, Nene and Kiria are fighting Blastmon just, I don't know, like a half-mile away. And at this time in the fight, Blastmon starts shooting crystallized missiles that just start scattering everywhere, and they cause the ground to open up and swallow Taiki, separating him from the group. When he wakes up, he finds himself, well, trapped underground in a canyon, with no way to contact his friends. He does notice, though, that he's not the only thing that fell down the canyon. That statue that Balmon seems to be connected to also fell down the canyon with him. He raises his hand up to it. I don't know why, he just does it. Which causes them both to start glowing. That's when Balmon shows up. Taiki's nervous, as you would imagine, but Balmon tells Taiki not to be afraid because he will not harm him because apparently Taiki was just blessed by the goddess. Balmon reveals that several years ago, he was a member of a heavenly high order of Digimon, who were experienced fighters and who worshipped a mystical goddess. Now, everyone in this order practiced and trained, seemingly day in and day out, to please the goddess. And for their work, determination, and rigorous lifestyle, they would be rewarded by getting a blessing from the goddess. This is where Balmon enters the story, who despite being the second strongest fighter in the order, second only to his mentor Angemon, he has yet to receive any sort of blessing from the goddess, and thus, without the blessing, cannot join the ranks as a goddess warrior, which is something he's been training to do ever since he was a small child. Balmon is understandably very upset about this, and pours his heart out to his mentor, Angemon. And I have to say, this is probably one of my more favorite scenes in the season. You have a young man here going through a crisis of fate because he feels that his higher power that he worships does not recognize his prayers, and may not even recognize him as a person, which to him is just so aggravating because he talks about how many years he spent training to become a goddess warrior, and how he feels unrewarded for all of his hard work and dedication. I also like Angemon in this scene, because the show could have had him say something corny like, "Oh, you gotta keep your faith, kid," or some cliched line about believing in yourself or something, but no, Angemon actually says very little. He just stands and listens to Balmon, because really, what can he say in this situation? What do you tell a kid who is understandably upset with his religious deity? I mean, Angemon can't speak for the goddess. He doesn't even know why she didn't reward him or pick him to become a goddess warrior. I mean, that's kind of just how life is. And in scenes like this, I think silence can say way more than words could ever hope to. Because to me, without saying anything, Angemon expresses a deep amount of understanding and sympathy to Balmon's plight, which to me shows how much of a good relationship they had. Then Balmon talks about the tragedy. Balmon explains that one day he comes to the temple, and upon entering is immediately attacked by all of his friends. He sees that on their foreheads there are weird runes and symbols, meaning that someone or something is controlling them. He tries to appeal to them and remind them of who they really are, but he can't do it, and he's forced to have to pull out his sword and defend himself. He ends up killing everyone he's ever known, including his mentor and best friend, Angemon. This is another really good scene because at this point in the story I was actually very interested in the Balmon-Angemon relationship. Even though it only lasted less than like a fourth of an episode, I thought that the visuals and a lot of the dialogue that they had really kind of connected me to it. I can't really appropriately describe in words why I felt so strongly about the relationship, but I will say that this flashback, or these series of flashbacks, basically renewed hope that this season could be good. That it's had a rough little start, and that we will start to see these characters evolve and grow, and that we could have possibly a very, very good season. Now, that never happened in my opinion, but this episode did raise my hopes up very high, and it deserves a little recognition.
Golf clap? Golf clap.
So Balmon tells Taiki that he's been on a mission to find whoever was responsible for the death of his friends, and kill them. And he lent his services to the Bagger army as a mercenary soldier in the hopes that it would help him on his search. But now that Taiki has been blessed by the goddess, Balmon wonders if he should instead join and help Taiki. So yeah, Balmon and Taiki manage to escape the canyon, and Taiki immediately tries to reconnect with his friends, but is attacked by them, and uh-oh, they've got the same symbols that Balmon's friends had on their heads as well. As you could imagine, this causes Balmon to freak out a little bit, as he learns that it's a mind-controlling machine that's responsible. And also, who owns that mind-controlling machine? Yeah, it's Lilithmon. This isn't necessarily a big twist because it's kind of predictable, but it fits because Lilithmon is, you know, a master of manipulation. So mind control would seem like something right up her alley. Balmon destroys the machine, and then he tries to destroy Lilithmon, but he chokes up a little bit, and Lilithmon stabs him through the stomach. And this is where I get a little confused. As Balmon lays dying on the ground, a ghostly image of that pheromone they met earlier appears and tells them to use the code ground to unlock the secrets of the zone, which causes all the floating pyramids in the background to unite into one giant pyramid, which then creates a protective dome around Taiki, Crossheart, and Balmon, and Taiki is instructed to download the goddess's data and load it into Balmon to save him. Meanwhile, Lilithmon is trying to break through the protective dome, which isn't going so well. So she decides to call down. Oh my god! It's Machinedramon! Machinedramon is my most favoritely designed Digimon in the whole universe, and he's here! Awesome! So it's a race against time between Lilithmon and Taiki, with Lilithmon destroying the barrier and Taiki waiting for all the goddess data to download into Beelzemon. Taiki has to leave Beelzemon though to help his friends fight off the Bagger army. Beelzemon has a flashback of Angemon telling him that the reason why he was never blessed by the goddess is because while he is the strongest, power is all he has. Beelzemon then jumps in front of a blast from Machinedramon, saving Shoutmon's life. Beelzemon collapses, seemingly dead. Machinedramon preps for another attack. But no, Beelzemon is not dead. In fact, the goddess has blessed him finally, so he can become... Oh my god, it's Beelzemon! When I first saw this, I was so excited. We were about to see Beelzemon, one of the coolest Digimon in the entire series, fight Machinedramon, one of the coolest designed Digimon in the entire series. This whole scene was nothing but a non-stop fangasm for me. I mean, he's got the wings, he's got the gun, he's got some interesting looking armor on, and it ends with Machinedramon exploding and Beelzemon disappearing, with Taiki saying that I'm sure they'll meet again soon. When I saw this, this was just great. But now that the emotional high is worn off, I have to look back at this objectively and acknowledge some very large missteps. First off, there's definitely been a theme of bad pacing in Cross Wars, and the character of Beelzemon is not immune to this. The show does an okay job of making Beelzemon seem mysterious by giving vague threats to Tactimon and checking up on Lilithmon, but I feel like the show just all of a sudden starts rushing to get to the Beelzemon transformation scene. I mean, we know Blastmon for less than an episode before he's kicked out of the story to make room for Beelzemon. Shouldn't Blastmon get 2 to 3 episodes just like all the other top generals got? But nope, 1 episode and then it's the Beelzemon confrontation. And on top of that, this isn't even the first time Beelzemon has met the heroes, or at least confronted them. As I mentioned before, he fought them at the Lake Zone. It's just that he didn't really do anything, and the heroes didn't even acknowledge that he existed. So I feel that takes a little bit of the gumpta out of this confrontation scene, when they've met once before and it didn't even really mean anything. Now here are 3 things I think the show could have done. 1, have had this confrontation in the Sand Zone be their first time ever meeting, thus adding some type of dramatic tension about this is like a big reveal. They're finally revealing who this character is, he's been lurking in the shadows the whole time. Have this bear introduction to him. Or maybe have Beelzemon fight Taiki multiple times. You know, in like little multiple hit and run attacks, setting up this kind of feeling that he's stalking them constantly. And have this Sand Zone episode be their real first face-to-face fight. And if you want them to only meet once before this confrontation, why not make that confrontation really mean something? Like have a whole episode based around Beelzemon and Crossheart fighting each other in like some jungle setting and like guerrilla warfare. And then have some line in the Sand Zone where Beelzemon goes, "It's time for me to finish what I started in the jungle." Use it to set up some type of rivalry or something. I don't know, those are just my little suggestions. Beelzemon is by no means the worst handled character in this season, but I'm definitely judging him a little more harshly because I like his character a lot more than I like most of the other characters. And the more I like something or someone, the more apparent their flaws are. Now let's talk about Beelzemon and his reincarnation. I have some problems with it, but it's not about the reincarnation itself. Like I don't have a problem with the goddess using her holy energy to rebirth Beelzemon into a new body. That's fine. And this is going to seem like a very minor nitpicky thing to bring up, but I think it's important for the point I'm going to bring up after this. And that minor nitpick is that apparently when Beelzemon receives the goddess's holy energy to form a new body, he does not form the body of an angel or some holy creature. Instead, he gets the body and reincarnation of Beelzemon, which his name is a takeoff Beelzebub. And if you don't know who Beelzebub is, well, Beelzebub is Satan. So you're telling me that this holy goddess turned her last holy god warrior into Satan? Or in the Digimon continuity, one of the 7 demon lords? You're telling me the show's creators couldn't find anyone from, say, the Angemon evolution family? Or heck, get creative, make up a whole new Digimon for Ballmon to turn into. I mean, I'm pretty sure you just made up this thing, and that seems to be like a holy Digimon. But sadly, I think we know why Beelzemon is really in here. And it's one word. Sometimes characters in a franchise become really popular, and because of that, writers sometimes write that character into a story, even if that character has no good reason to be there. And the franchise just keeps shoving that character into every nook and cranny they can. Now, Digimon is no stranger to this practice. I mean, how many times has Omnimon showed up for seemingly no reason? Whenever the show or one of the movies needs a cool, badass, legendary Digimon, they usually bring out Omnimon. And what do you know, he's in this season as well. And what do you know, fan favorite villain Myotismon is in here as well. So we got a fan favorite hero, a fan favorite villain, and all the Digi-memories, which just are basically references to the past partner Digimon. And we also got Ken here.
But we'll talk more about that later.
With the inclusion of Beelzemon, I feel like some of the writers were like, okay, so we got all these cool characters from the past, well, let's add in a cool fan favorite anti-hero character with a redemption arc, and it'll be Beelzemon. Ah ha 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 ha, no. This, I feel, was a very fatal mistake for the season, because this type of pandering may kind of work for Omnimon and Myotismon, but I think that's because Myotismon and Omnimon are liked by fans for a completely different reason than why Beelzemon is liked by fans. And I can't stress this enough, this is just my opinion. You may like these characters for different reasons, or you may not like these characters at all, whatever. But for me, I think the main reason people like both Omnimon and Myotismon is not because of their characters, but rather what they represent. Omnimon is cool to me because he represents a new form of evolution, one that hasn't been seen in the show and has just been introduced. And introduced, I think, in a very cool way by combining War Greymon and Metal Garurumon. There was nothing deep about his character, in fact, I think he only said his name in the movie. Myotismon seems to be universally accepted as the best villain from Adventure. But once again, I don't think that was because of his character. I think it was because his arc in the story offered some really cool ideas, a new location, and as a villain, he was kind of threatening. And that's why you can stick him in so much stuff, because they represent both ultimate good and ultimate evil. Just stick Omnimon in a hero position and Myotismon in a villain position, and you have accurately represented their characters. With Beelzemon, though, you have kind of a higher standard to live up to. Especially if you're going to make this Beelzemon a villain that turns into a hero and is out to redeem himself. You see, the reason why I think most people liked Beelzemon wasn't just because he looked cool. It was because of his character, seeing him grow from this.
You have made me sick to my stomach. I think I'll have to go somewhere and puke my guts out.
To this.
I want a Digimon! It's not fair! I'm the strongest! I deserve it!
To this.
To have power is to be strong! I'll keep loading data till no one can stop me! No one! No one!
To this.
Jerry, give me your hand! Let's go, Jerry! What are you waiting for?
To this.
I just wanted you guys to meet my tamers, i.e. Hamako.
Can get an audience emotionally attached to the character, and can also create very high standards for your character to live up to, especially if it seems like you're relying on the fans' thoughts and feelings about the previous incarnation to boost up this incarnation. So the question becomes, does this Beelzemon live up to the expectations of the previous Beelzemon? Nope. The Tamers version is better paced, better written, and overall has a better redemptive arc. Like I said, Cross Wars at times is very rushed, or it feels very rushed. They're trying to fit so much stuff into this season that it doesn't develop a lot of it properly. With Impmon, he doesn't become Beelzemon until about halfway through the season. And the first half of that season, we learn about him as a character. He builds up a presence and relationships with the main characters through multiple encounters with them. We see him at his high points and we see him at his low points, all culminating with him turning into Beelzemon. With Balmon, he has a good backstory, but I wish I knew more about him as a character. Because when he's trapped in the cavern with Taiki, recounting his past, I don't know anything about him as a character. Once again, I have to say it's a good backstory, but I'm not getting as emotionally involved as I think the writers wanted me to. And then we hit hyperdrive because as soon as they get back onto the surface, before we know it, boom, he's Beelzemon. And if you think I'm being unfair by comparing the two because they're from two different seasons, I would say, no it's not, because I am certain they want us to make this comparison. Or at least, a comparison. Because why else would they stick him in this story, especially in a place where it doesn't make sense for him to be, as some holy arbiter? Well, that was a nice long rant. Let's move on. Now at this point, I thought the story was gonna really pick up. I mean, Beelzemon's a new addition to Crossheart, and he's out for revenge against one of the main generals of the Bagger army, Lilithmon. But guess what? That whole plot about revenge and about his dead friends that he had to kill, that seems to be completely forgotten up until his last episode. I don't remember it really being mentioned again in between the Sand Zone and the Hell Zone, but if it was just in passing. He's not actively pursuing revenge, he's just hanging around with Taiki, who's just doing the same thing that he's been doing for like the past 4 zones. In fact, I would venture to say that Beelzemon isn't even that important. I mean, okay, he's strong, but it's not like he's a part of Shoutmon X7 or something. He's a part of Shoutmon X4, but as a speed attachment, because apparently when you fuse Shoutmon to Beelzemon, Beelzemon becomes a horse, and then Shoutmon goes on top of him to make Shoutmon a centaur. Of course! And here I thought Shoutmon was gonna get like wings or that giant gun attached to his arm. But that would just be silly. But even this fusion doesn't last too long, and becomes out of date very quickly. And then the Death General's half, they try to give Beelzemon something else to do, so they make him fall in love with Mervamon. This is just fantastic. I would much rather be watching this than watching Beelzemon get revenge on Lilithmon for killing all of his friends. This is horrible, stupid love stories are my favorite thing in the whole world.
Oh, by the way, I was being sarcastic.
But finally we get to the Hell Zone, where all the heroes are trying to escape it before it collapses in on itself or something. But they face one problem. Lilithmon and Blastmon have fused together to create this thing, and they are preventing their escape. And Beelzemon, remembering that yes, he was supposed to be trying to kill her the whole time, decides to sacrifice himself to kill Lilithmon, thus completing his mission and saving the lives of all of his friends. So overall, what did I think of his revenge story? Well, to answer that, I have to go on another rant about something else. But it is very relevant because it is the entire reason Beelzemon went on his mission in the first place. That's right, we're going to talk about Lilithmon. Now, I've already talked about Lilithmon, I've already talked about how her character is mishandled and how she's reduced to fan service and all that stuff. But now I'm going to talk about how all those demeaning demotions backfire not only on her character, but on Beelzemon's story. You see, when Beelzemon starts his quest for revenge against Lilithmon, she's a high-ranking member in the most powerful army in the digital world, and is even expected to become Baggermon's heir. She's smart, cunning, threatening, intimidating, influential, and most of all, evil. She's also a very good choice as Beelzemon's enemy because she does specialize in manipulation. She's sadistic and cruel and just loves doing bad things for the sake of being bad. So to reiterate once again, at the beginning of the story, Beelzemon's going after one of the biggest fish in the organization, and also one of the meanest, cruelest pieces of work in the whole digital world. It has the makings of a very good story. But then the Death General's half of the saga starts, and yeah, she just goes downhill way too fast. Her character now is nothing more than comic relief and skimpy outfits. Her rank as commanding officer has been replaced with the rank of a foot soldier. Now all of this would be bad if she was just a regular character standing on her own. But what makes this horrible is the fact that there's a whole nother character who's tied to her as well. And to make matters worse, he's tied to how evil she is, because the story of Beelzemon and Lilithmon is one of revenge. And I'm desperately trying to find a way I can explain this, but my words are escaping me, so I'm going to try to keep it very simple by just saying that when the story started unnecessarily demoting Lilithmon, they were essentially demoting the final climax between her and Beelzemon. Let me try my very best to try to explain. For about, I would say, 2/3 of the season, we've been kind of building up to this climax, or this resolution to Beelzemon's story. And the thing that made it so epic was Lilithmon's rank and her power. And it was like this idea of Beelzemon going against this huge, enormous system and going after one of the people at the top. That's kind of what attracted me to this story. That's why I was like, this is gonna be cool. But by the time we get to the Hell Zone, she's a nobody. She has no power, no control, and she's just taking orders from some kid in suspenders. And I just didn't see the point of all of this. Why did they have to make her such a low person on the totem pole? Why couldn't they keep her near the top? I mean, if they wanted to get her out in the field fighting so she can confront Beelzemon instead of staying in the castle, I could have probably come up with a better idea. In fact, I did in one of the comments. I thought I came up with a good idea, which was just have a scene that goes like this. Lilithmon, I, Bagramon, thank you very much for your services to the Bagra army. Without you, we couldn't have possibly conquered the digital world in such a quick amount of time. I have a new task for you, though. Apparently Crossheart has returned to the digital world. I need you to work with my brother, Dark Knightmon, to destroy them. I have assigned you as a head officer to this new task force. Good luck on your mission. So all the show needed to do was allow her to keep her rank and have her not wear skimpy outfits. That's all the show needed to do, and everything would have been fine on her end. But no, we had to make her a horny dominatrix who starts masturbating on the Hellfield. That's the only way anyone will be able to take this confrontation seriously. With a stupid, retarded, lazy love story and lots of boobs. Do you get where I'm coming from with this? Do you kind of understand what I'm trying to say here? To me, they messed up the easiest part of the revenge story, and that's the villain's part. I just don't get it. I don't get how you can screw that up. Ugh. So then Beelzemon kamikazes himself into Lilithmon's face. I don't really care because, as we've already established, death is meaningless. Everyone just comes back to life. And seeing how he wasn't that big a part of the story anyway, he wasn't part of X7, I feel as though very little was lost. It wasn't a very satisfying end to Beelzemon's story because at the end of the day, he's just taking out 2 expendable foot soldiers who were going to die anyway. And although, like I said, Beelzemon is my favorite Digimon character of this season that's a hero, and this scene was depressing for me, it wasn't because of Beelzemon's death. It was because of the death of Lilithmon and Blastmon, who I apparently cared more about than Beelzemon. How crap does that make Beelzemon sound? I care more about the 2 comic relief villains than I care about Beelzemon and his whole I need to avenge the death of my friend's backstory. Okay, final thoughts. Beelzemon, decent character I guess, got a good backstory, not enough is done with it. He doesn't hold a candle to the Tamer's Beelzemon. But on his own in this season, I like him more than Shoutmon. I like him a little more than Darulamon. I just think that Tamers has this really bad habit of taking characters that can be good and interesting and then just forgetting about them or not using them properly or rushing through their backstory and their conclusions. And you can tell there was an idea with a lot of these guys, but I just don't know what happened. They keep dropping the ball, and it makes me think, what is even the point? Why have these backstories if you're not going to use them properly? Maybe if the season had cut more time to resolve these problems or backstories by, say, getting rid of some of the Death Generals, or maybe getting rid of some of the Digimon partners. Look, it's really hard for me to dissect all this and to try to point to just all the specific things that could have been changed to fix the entire season, but just the way it's structured and the way that the plot is just so repetitive, but it's just accomplishing nothing at the same time, doing a lot. I just don't know how to put it into words. My brain is shutting down very slowly, and you're hearing it shutting down. Next time we talk about you and maybe the ending, I don't know. It's good to be back recording, I guess. Oh boy. Good night.